I'm out here on what is a very windy afternoon. You will probably hear the wind in the background, to prepare this area for planting. Now you may recall, if you've seen the video, that when I prepared this in the earlier stage, around about 6 weeks ago, I cut green manure, covered it with newspaper and then with straw. How's it fared? Well, you'll see there's a certain amount of the green manure, which was oats, has actually found its way through where my cover from the newspaper wasn't quite adequate. So the first thing I've got to do here is go around and basically pull this out. Just leaving it on top is all I have to do. It will just simply dry out and add to the straw. The good thing is the straw itself hasn't actually germinated. I haven't seen any wheat growth coming through. Now what I'm wanting to plant is some pumpkins in this area, and that's one of the main reasons I prepared the ground in this way. What I've been growing last year and I want to grow again this year is these particular pumpkins, which is a sweet grey. There is a hybrid version of this, I think it's called Crown Prince, and it may produce a little bit better than the non-hybrid version. But I prefer the non-hybrid one simply because I can actually keep the seed and continue it. Pumpkin seed, if you think about it, is one of the easiest seeds there is to actually keep. So why not? If you're able to keep your pumpkin seed, do it. The only issue with keeping pumpkin seeds is that you really need to grow only one variety. And it's taken me a while to actually really choose the variety that I like for growing here. Now, if I had used plastic to cover this instead of this method of newspaper and straw, I'm sure with black plastic I would have achieved a better cover and a better weed kill. But the advantage of this method over the plastic is that it's already now prepared for the ongoing crop of the pumpkins. And maintenance wise, all I need to do, rather than have to weed ground that is got vines wanting to run over it, is simply to come over, add a little bit more newspaper and straw to any areas that are wanting to produce weeds. And so it's fairly easy to maintain, and once the pumpkins take over, it'll be really good. To prepare for planting, what I'm doing is simply opening a section through to the soil, which I will then add compost to. So doing it like this allows us to see what's happening. You see there's quite a bit of the newspaper still here. It is fairly slow, but of course being newspaper it easily peels aside. And look, this looks like a little straw has gotten underneath at this point. But the oats that was planted here has almost entirely been eaten by the soil life, the worms and microbes, though some of the roots are still visible. So with a hole like this, I'll then be able to backfill that with compost and plant into it. So I'll make 9 of these holes and come back with some compost. Now I'm going to add a little sprinkling of blood and bone, plus a little sprinkling of potassium to each area. Pumpkins love potassium. Use some wood ash if you have it, otherwise you may need to use some sulphate of potash. But plenty of potassium will make pumpkins grow really well. Now I add a nice generous amount of compost to each hole. Now I've found that this commercial compost, which I only recently bought, is really still quite hot. I can feel it through these gloves, I can really feel the heat. So it's too hot for me to plant seeds in today. I will leave it for a couple of days to cool off, which it will do in this smaller amount. It'll cool quite quickly and come back and plant then. So we'll continue in a couple of days. So a couple of days have gone by and I'm back with the pumpkin seed to plant it. This is, as I said before, pumpkin seed that I've kept myself, and it's from more than one pumpkin. I think it's always good not to just have one set of genetics, but to spread it around amongst your pumpkins, and I think that way you'll probably get a better outcome in the long term. A couple of days have gone by, not because this actually needed that time to cool down. It's actually really nice and cool. It cooled down within a couple of hours. A couple of days went by simply because I had other things I had to do in my life, such as go to work. So with these, I'm going to put in around about 4 per pile. It's not that I really need that many or going to grow that many. Actually, I will thin this back to probably just 1 plant per heap of compost that I put in, because I think on 1 plant per heap you actually get the best nutrition into your pumpkin. If you let them all grow, they just don't do as well. But the reason I put 4 in is because you need to give yourself a chance that some won't germinate, or that rats will come and eat some, and that type of thing. Even if rats ate out a whole clump and I had more than I need on another, I could transplant plants around. I did that quite successfully last year. So it's always good to give yourself a few chances. Okay, the seeds are all in now, and the ultimate goal of that, as I said, is that I'll have 9 pumpkin vines growing here. How many pumpkins will I get? On my previous experience, grouped in tight like this, you don't get a huge number per vine. If I get 3 per vine, I'll be very happy. If I even get less, it doesn't really worry me. But we'll come back and we'll actually find out, see what we get at the end of the season. One of the reasons that I chose to do this straw is that previously I've had a lot of problems with, well, it's insect or certain ground life that actually attacks the skin of the pumpkin, and this leads to the pumpkin rotting and really seriously reduces the keeping qualities of the pumpkin. I'm trying to avoid that skin damage this time, and I'm hoping that having the pumpkins on the straw is going to be sufficient, but I won't rely on that only. I'm going to experiment, and I'm going to use some other methods to actually raise the pumpkins off the ground and even off the straw in this case, to compare how well they work and what works best. So it's quite likely that I'll make a video about these pumpkins at harvest time, which of course is many months away now, but if not, we'll certainly revisit them as they grow over the year with our monthly updates. So keep an eye out for those. And right now, while it is trying to come down with a few spits of rain, I don't think that's going to be very significant. So I'm going to put the sprinkler on here and give it a good soak so that these seeds get underway.